Good evening, one and all. So, welcome friends again to one of the academic sessions of ERCP 316. So, initial two sessions we covered cannulation technique and stone management by ERCP by eminent experts, and today we'll be covering another important aspect of stricture management. To cover this stricture management, we have two eminent faculties, Dr. Pankaj Desai, who is the head of department at Surat Institute of Digestive Sciences, will be speaking on ERCP in benign biliary strictures, followed by Dr. Rajesh Puri, who is Director of Interventional Endoscopy at Medanta Hospital, Gurugaon. He will be speaking on ERCP in hilar strictures. So I welcome both the faculties and I'll request Dr. Pankaj Desai to start his lecture on ERCP in benign biliary strictures.
Thank you, Dr. Gaurav, for this invitation. And without taking much time, we will directly go on to the session. And I think whenever the time is up, you can just let me know so that I can stop, right? Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So benign biliary strictures are most often arising from post-operative or inflammatory etiologies. The most common causes are post-surgical, liver transplantation, post-cholecystectomy, bilioventric anastomosis, chronic pancreatitis, PSC, and IgG4 cholangiopathy. We are not going to discuss about the less common causes. The incidence of these strictures, especially the surgery-related benign biliary strictures from cholecystectomy, bile duct surgery, and liver transplantation. Lap chole-related strictures 0.5% usually caused by direct surgical bile duct injury, including thermal injury, seizures, ligatures, or clips. That following liver transplantation occur in 10 to 40%, quite frequent and most commonly occur at the anastomotic site. Chronic pancreatitis related strictures are non-surgical strictures occurring in up to 13 to 21% of the patients. How to diagnose? Identification of these strictures require correlation of the patient's clinical history, imaging, including CT or MR, and endoscopy findings. Histological assessment with cytology or histopathology is usually required to exclude malignancy, because in some indeterminate strictures, it is always imperative that you have to diagnose whether this is malignant or benign. Some cases may be diagnostically challenging, require multidisciplinary approach or a prolonged period of clinical surveillance for exclusion of underlying occult malignancy, because sometimes it may not be very evident what actually we are dealing with. Cross-sectional abdominal imaging can localize the pathology as well as provide a roadmap to plan the therapeutic ERCP. Clinical presentation may vary depending upon the etiology within the biliary tree and the degree of ductal narrowing. Patients may be asymptomatic to having biological derangements in liver enzymes or present with deep jaundice complicated by life-threatening cholangitis. Treatment methods and outcomes also vary depending on this. Diagnosis: MR and CT are often the first line of imaging in patients with biliary obstruction. MRCP provides non-invasive detailed images of the biliary tree along with location, length, characters of the strictures prior to ERCP. MRCP is very important. The features of benign strictures are they are quite regular, symmetrical, and usually short segment. In contrast, malignant strictures are usually irregular, asymmetrical, longer length, especially those which are more than 14, has to be considered to be having some underlying malignancy. ERCP and or EUS guided FNA or biopsy are used to establish a histological diagnosis. ERCP guided methods include brush cytology or transpapillary forceps biopsy. Both have high specificity but low sensitivity. This is very important. So a meta-analysis which shows sensitivity and specificity for diagnosis of malignant biliary stricture using brush 45% and 99% respectively, and using forceps is 48-99. So we see that we have a very good high specificity, but sensitivity is less. Combine both brush and forceps, you get a specificity of 100, but sensitivity of only around 60. To improve this diagnostic yield to see whether there is underlying malignancy, we can use EUS. Cholangioscopy is now readily available, and things like FISH, intraductal ultrasound, and confocal laser endoscopy are documented, but in routine practice, we have to stick with EUS and cholangioscopy to get this diagnosis. The benign strictures, usually on radiology, those which are iatrogenic would be unifocal, extrahepatic, occurring at the level of the injury. That is very important. How you will differentiate between a malignant and a benign stricture on radiology. Usually single. Just give me a second. हाँ जी. हाँ, तो लीला ज्वेलर्स वाली गली छोड़ दो, उसके बाजू वाली गली में अंदर आ जाओ, राइट साइड पे दूसरी गली, लीला ज्वेलर्स वाली गली नहीं, उसके बाद वाली गली, ठीक है, उसमें आ जाओ. हाँ, बस उसके आगे वाली गली में अंदर राइट साइड पे आ जाइए. ओके, हाँ चलो, और नीचे छोड़ दीजिए. हाँ, मैं जरा मीटिंग में हूँ. Sorry for that interruption. I had to just take that call. It was important. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Sorry. Just it was just an important call which I had to receive. Something urgent at Tanda. Okay. So we'll just we were talking about the iatrogenic injury. They are single strictures at the level of the injury or at the level of anastomosis, and usually unifocal. Multifocal is very uncommon unless it is a liver transplant patients. Primary sclerosing cholangitis, you have multifocal diffuse alternating short segmental stenosis, or you have a classic beaded or prune tree appearance that we can always make out. IgG4, usually the stricture is distal, and there is underlying pathology of the pancreas, which you can always find out. Chronic pancreatitis, you have distal obstructions. We are not going to discuss the rest because it is not very common. Now we come to the management. ERCP is the first line of management option for most of these patients with benign biliary strictures. Endoscopic access to the major papilla is a prerequisite. That I think, Gaurav, they have discussed how to cannulate and things. So endoscopic therapy of BBS is safe, effective, repeatable, and less invasive than other treatment modalities such as PTBD or surgery. Endoscopic methods to treat a stricture includes dilatation, using over the guide wire balloon or rigid dilators or boogies, followed by insertion or one or more plastic stents, and now a fully covered metal stents. When to use, what to use, how many times, we will all discuss it later. Plastic stents are periodically changed at an interval of 6 to 12 months to promote biliary drainage and output. There is recent data to support the use of fully covered SEMS for the treatment of the strictures. Reported advantages of the fully SEMS includes high clinical and technical success, ease of insertion, and need of fewer endoscopic procedures for stricture resolution. This is a diagram. This is a chart which will show you the three modalities which are most commonly used and which pathology. And this is very clear. So chronic pancreatitis, dilatation is not going to help. You have to put one or more plastic stents, and you can use fully covered SEMS. PSC, only dilate. Sometimes when there is a dominant stricture, you may put a stent. Liver transplantation, stents and fully covered stents. Surgery, you would either need stent or fully covered stents. IgG cholangiopathy, only plastic stents, no metal stents. And bilioenteric anastomosis, you can either dilate with a balloon or you can put a plastic stent. So this is a very clear message as to what we can do in the commonly causing benign biliary stricture etiologies. For the preparation, what is the role of antibiotics? Prophylactic administration of IV antibiotics, which cover gram-negative bacteria, Enterococcus and Pseudomonas, are recommended, especially in patients with hilar strictures, liver transplantation, and primary sclerosing cholangitis for the potential of complex or multiple strictures complicating these conditions. However, for other patients, prophylactic antibiotics do not appear to prevent post-ERCP cholangitis, but we always give prophylactic antibiotic before ERCP. Incomplete biliary drainage is the worst problem. You have to always be sure that you have drained all the segments which the contrast has gone beyond the stricture, otherwise it causes bacterium and cholangitis. The other factors associated with ERCP related cholangitis in PSC would include a longer procedural time, intraductal manipulation, and trying to take biopsy, cytology, balloon dilatation, and cholangioscopy, which will all add to the increased risk of cholangitis. Therapeutic ERCP requires successful cannulation, a sphincterotomy for facilitating stenting, and adjuncting therapies like pre-cut or using different types of cannulation techniques, which already has been discussed. Few things, usually a hydrophilic 0.035 or 889 mm wire is recommended, but to our practice or to my knowledge and our experience, we prefer a Terumo 0.032 inch angulated tip Terumo success wire, which is very successful in traversing the tightest of the strictures. Then for action, you may change the wire or use the Terumo wire. So this is a very important message that I would convey. When conventional guide wire method fails, techniques such as retraction of an inflated extraction balloon to straighten the stricture or cholangioscopy assisted wire you can use. Forceful advancement, don't try to force yourself, don't try to push with cannulas, you can cause for false track or a perforation. For dilatation now, severe fibrotic strictures, initial balloon or boogie dilatation may be required, followed by SEMS placement or a plastic stent placement. Very tight stricture sometimes may be only caused by a balloon dilator. New balloon, new hurricane balloon is the trick to negotiate very tight strictures over the wire. All dilators are passed over a wire traversing the stricture visualized under fluoroscopy. Use of dilator is guided by the width of the bile duct. So which French dilator you have to use? 5 French, 7 French or a 10 French will depend on the size of the stricture and the adjacent bile duct. Dilatation, what we do usually, if you are using a balloon, you will keep it inflated for 30 to 60 seconds and until the waist of the stricture disappears if you are using contrast in the balloon, which we usually do not use. So we will just have the feel, keep it dilated for 30 seconds, and that should be a successful dilatation. Forceful dilatation should be avoided for risk of perforation, and especially in those early postoperative periods, at least within 4 weeks of liver transplantation, or while the patient is ongoing high dose of immunosuppression. This is important. Stricture recurrence after dilatation may be reduced by placement of a stent. Plastic stents, extrahepatic strictures traditionally be treated with multiple plastic stents. Long-term outcomes of this may be equivalent or superior to the surgical management. So a systemic review of 47 trials, including 1,116 patients, showed that multiple plastic stents had a higher clinical success, 94.3 versus 60% using single stent, and a fewer adverse events when compared to a single stent. So multiple plastic stents is the way to go. Treatment of strictures with plastic stents typically involves 3 monthly exchanges with placement of an increasing number or diameter of stents. So what we usually do is every 3 months, if the patient's LFT is normal, patient doesn't have cholangitis, we don't remove the stent and exchange. What we do is we keep on adding stents at every 3 months till the patient has 4 or 5 stents, and then we keep the stents inside for 6 months and remove all the stents. Alternatively, the maximum number of stents can be inserted at the index ERCP. This is one more theory, that you can put 1, 2, 3, as many stents you can put at the index procedure, but this is sometimes very difficult in strictures which are too tight. So a graded stenting is always helpful. Both approaches offer similar efficacy with regard to the stricture. It depends on how easily the stent goes. Where multiple stents are used, the duration of placement does not appear to affect incidence of symptomatic stent occlusion. This is important to remember, and is similar for stent exchange within 6 months compared to stent exchange after longer period. So the duration of stenting is not important. You can do after 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. Fully covered SEMs now are suitable for the treatment of strictures, as they have a silicone covering which prevents tissue ingrowth and stent embedment. If the uncovered stents are used by mistake, then there is a reactive tissue ingrowth and it is very difficult to remove them. So you have to use a stent in stent technique, putting in a fully covered stent inside the uncovered stent, and then you can remove both the stents after 3 to 6 months. Although SEMs are more expensive, they have significantly wider diameter. As we know, it's 10 mm versus 3.3 millimeter, and are technically easier to insert than placing multiple plastic stents. So now there is a favor going in favor of the fully covered metal stents. Alternately, if you can't do ERCP or ERCP fails, PTBD oblique EUS, depending on the expertise that you have in your setting, especially in those cases who have undergone a hepatic Roux-en-Y hepaticojejunostomy or have a gastric outlet obstruction or duodenal compression or a prior duodenal stent. In these cases, you can use a PTBD or a EUS. Probably that we can discuss. There would be a whole theory, and you can do a hepaticogastrostomy or a choledochoduodeноstomy and get the strictures obliterated. Now, briefly, Gaurav, please remind me of the time. Benign biliary strictures, which are post-operative.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We usually, these are the most common strictures that we come across. And what classification we routinely use is a Strasberg or a Bergman operative biliary injuries and Bismuth for all bile duct strictures. So Bergman in 1996 had given a very simple classification, which is very easy to follow. That type A is a cystic duct leak or leak from aberrant ducts. Type B is major bile duct leak without concomitant strictures. And type D is complete transaction of the bile duct with either a segment loss or without a segment loss. So this is a very simple, and these are a few examples of type A, type B, type C, and type D injuries where you have segment loss. So very easy. When to use ERCP? Type A, any aberrant duct leaks, you can use ERCP, and that is very easy. For type B injuries where you have injury to the bile duct, what you can do is do an ERCP and put multiple stents. This is an example where multiple stents in the first sitting would help to not only decompress but prevent stricture formation, which is invariable due to injury to this bile duct. When you have clips which are on the bile duct, then what you have to do is either do a dilatation or put multiple stents or stent exchanges that can be done. And type 3 injury where you have segment loss or where you have injury to the bile duct. In these cases, what you have to do is surgery and only surgery. One important trick which we have done or which we have learned, we have just published a paper on that, that you, as you see in this figure, this is a bile duct with a segment loss of almost 2 centimeters. So what we do is we put intraoperative stents rather than trying to reconstruct during the early phase, because when the patient comes to you, patient will have a bilioma, patient will have ascites, patient will be in sepsis. So you can't do anything about this. So what we have found out that when we put one plastic stent and just drain that area, this will ultimately develop into a benign stricture. And then this stricture ultimately can be dilated sequentially with multiple stents, or at a later date, you can go for a Roux-en-Y hepaticojejunostomy. So only surgery. And Costa Mania has very definitely told that you go for aggressive multiple stent placements. As you can see here, place as many stents as possible. We usually place 5 to 6 stents, leave them for 6 months and then remove these stents. As you can see the strictures, then remodel around the stent and you have quite a good diameter of the bile duct, which is usually good enough for a long period of time. As you see here, when you, a very long-term follow-up also has suggested that patients with multiple stents over a period of 10 years are asymptomatic almost to the tune of 80%, 11.4% only stricture recurrence, and this is at 10 years, sorry. So mean follow-up of almost 13 years now. Orthotopic liver transplant strictures, they are either anastomotic or non-anastomotic. Anastomotic are good candidates for endoscopic treatment, and that endoscopic treatment would include balloon dilatations with plastic stents or covered metal stents with a lasso, which can be retrieved, and they are short stents. So, and they gave a good success of more than 80%. Non-anastomotic strictures, they are non-responding to endoscopic dilatations, and majority of the patients, almost to the tune of 50%, need retransplantation, and they have a very high mortality. So this is a study which shows that in 20 patients with anastomotic strictures and non-anastomotic strictures, the success in anastomotic strictures is almost 92.8%, which is very good. Non-anastomotic, I don't think we should venture with ERCP. This is an example of liver transplant patients. You can see the guide wire. This is anastomotic stricture. You place multiple stents and that stricture has remodeled. This is another example showing the post-transplant strictures, and the stricture resolution with time definitely improves, and you have a good patency of stents. This is again an example of ischemic stricture, which is developing, which is non-anastomotic, and these strictures, which are so tight, they are having a very poor response to dilatation. Surgery is also useless, and 25 to 50% eventually die or undergo retransplantation because of jaundice and sepsis. Now, 2 slides about chronic pancreatitis. These strictures are because of repeated inflammation and scarring of the pancreatic head. In the setting of chronic pancreatitis, endoscopic therapy is recommended as a first line of treatment. For the CBD strictures, less invasive. These strictures are more refractory, that we have to keep in mind, and especially those with pancreatic calcification in the head, large burden, they respond very poorly to endoscopic treatment. Multiple plastic stents or fully covered stents are useful. A systemic review of 25 studies of CP has shown a clinical success of 77%, which is quite modest compared to 33% with the plastic stents. Median number of ERCPs to achieve this success was also low. Current data supports the use of SEMS as an effective therapy for chronic pancreatitis biliary strictures. Small patients may not respond, as we have told, and eventually will require surgical biliary drainage. 2 slides on primary sclerosing cholangitis. In this strictures, we have to always exclude malignancy because it is very important. They are associated with strictures from fibrotic inflammation and may be multifocal and intrahepatic or extrahepatic. Traditional blood cytology has modest sensitivity and high specificity for diagnosing cholangiocarcinoma in the setting of PSC. Fish and confocal microscopy may increase the sensitivity, particularly if the cytology is atypical, but it is very difficult because you don't have that in routine practice. As regards to ERCP in PSC for symptomatic patients, for dominant strictures, ERCP is must as a relief for biliary or relieving biliary obstruction. It preserves the hepatic function and may improve long-term survival. MRCP prior to ERCP is always important to know which stricture and the location of the stricture and characterization. Then you plan your ERCP, whether to dilate that stricture or whether you would like to place in a stent for a short period of time. Routine prophylactic antibiotics, as we have already discussed, is always mandatory when you are dealing with PSC strictures. Right? PSC strictures, either you can do a balloon or a boogie dilatation without or a temporary stent, as we discussed. Adverse events, pancreatitis, cholangitis are significantly more frequent in the stent group than in the dilatation group. Balloon dilatation as monotherapy is a preferred initial therapy in patients of primary sclerosing cholangitis and dominant strictures. Last slide on bilioenteric anastomosis. The patients have strictures following Roux-en-Y hepaticojejunostomy, gastric bypass, or Whipple's because of the length of the afferent limb, acute angulation of the anastomosis, or adhesions. Use of colonoscopy or balloon enteroscopy has traditionally been used to access the papilla, and now we have enteroscopes or double balloon enteroscopes, or the recent most motorized enteroscope to reach and do the treatment. But with these, the lack of an elevator on the scopes does limit the cannulation ability, and particularly when the papilla cannot be viewed and faced. And therefore, wherever available, a short type of double balloon enteroscope is preferred. EUS guided transgastric dilatation or stenting is showing good promise. So nowadays, where you have access to EUS, you have persons going interventional EUS, getting across from the gastric or the duodenal side into the bile duct and doing a dilatation of the strictures antegrade or putting a plastic stent is helpful. A meta-analysis of 15 studies showed overall success of 80% with single balloon to reach the anastomosis, 69.4% option cholangiogram, and 61% for successful intervention. Overall success of enteroscopy as a modality for treatment of these strictures is modest. Adverse event to the tune of 6.5% occurs, and balloon dilatation only is effective for these strictures. So surgery, this is the last slide.
Okay.
So surgery, when all the ERCP modalities fail, is always the best option. That has we discussed with the patient. So to end, biliary strictures may arise from a variety of etiologies. Symptomatic patients may present with jaundice or cholangitis, which are indications for the treatment. ERCP is the first line, and as we have discussed, it is cost effective, typically involves dilatation, balloon or boogie cath dilatation, or placement of plastic or metal stents. Thank you so much for your kind attention, and maybe we can have questions whenever. Thank you so much.
Sir, we'll take questions at the end of the second lecture.
Sure, no problem, no problem.
Dr. Puri, are you there? Dr. Rajesh?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So next topic will be covered by Dr. Rajesh Puri, who is Director of Interventional Endoscopy at Medanta Hospital, and he needs no introduction. So, sir will be speaking on ERCP in hilar strictures. Over to you, sir.
Is my slides are visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Is my slides are visible, Dr. Gaurav?
Yes, sir. Now fully visible, sir. Only slides are visible.
Good evening, everyone. And I would like to thank Dr. Gaurav Chawla for organizing this symposium. And the topic assigned to me is malignant biliary obstruction, why and how to intervene. For next subsequent 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about the malignant biliary obstruction. My colleague has talked about the various benign biliary structure and when to intervene, how to intervene. So I'm going purely to the malignant biliary stricture, both lower and the upper end biliary strictures. As I'm talking about the hilar stricture, malignant hilar stricture, that means your diagnosis is clear that you are dealing with the malignant disease. The only problem is if you are not very sure, or if the diagnosis of the biliary obstruction can be made by CT, MRI or MRCP, but that doesn't give any tissue diagnosis that give the morphological diagnosis of benign versus malignancy. To get the tissue diagnosis, we have an echoendoscope or we have a cholangioscope, that is spyglass with the spy-bite biopsies, or ERCP is done for any reason. At that time, you can take the brush cytology and the biopsy. But ERCP is generally not used to diagnose is it benign or malignant, because if it is malignant and if the patient is a surgical candidate, then you would like to subject the patient directly for the surgery. So ERCP should not be used as a sole modality for diagnosis. Yes, if ERCP is used as decompressing the biliary tract, in those situations, you can take the breast cytology or you can take the biopsies. The common causes of the biliary obstruction is CA, head of the pancreas, or ampullary or duodenal growth that include the periampullary malignancies, which is the common cause of lower and bile duct obstruction. When we talk about the higher, that is at the hilum, then carcinoma gallbladder in our country, or the cholangiocarcinoma, or maybe a metastatic portal lymphadenopathy, which can produce the malignant biliary obstruction. Now the question comes, why to stent these patients? Those patients who are surgically resectable, do you require to stent all these patients? The answer is no, because 70 to 90% of the patient who has biliary obstruction, they have jaundice, and if the jaundice level is more than 15 milligram, they impair the cellular immunity, thereby allowing the tumor growth, worsening the coagulopathy, and they lead to the incidence of SIRS due to the bacterial translocation. And because of that, if the bilirubin level is more than 15, at some center people take the bilirubin level of 10, In those surgically resectable case, you can do the preoperative biliary stenting. Otherwise, preoperative biliary stenting should not be done. It is only done if patient is in cholangitis or patient has a bilirubin level of more than 10. And now many of the center do up to 15 milligram per deciliter. If you look at the stent, the first plastic stent was made by Charles Robert Stent in 1807 to 1885. Now the biliary stenting can be done in the biliary obstruction either at the lower end or at the higher end in a preoperative stenting which I have discussed, or it can be done as a palliative biliary stenting, or biliary stenting in the cases of gastric outlet obstruction, or stenting in the Claskin tumor when you are planning that this patient may require adjuvant, neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy. Now, if you look at the preoperative biliary drainage in pancreatic malignancy, this is the article, which is a retrospective study in 241 patients of pancreatic carcinoma by Siddiqui. It is published in the Digestive Disease Sciences in 2013. And what they have shown that preoperative biliary stenting is a safe and effective to place the stent preoperatively in the pancreatic carcinoma. The adverse events are acceptable. Stent occlusion is seen in around 5.8% of the cases after 6 months. So those patients who are operable, either they are jaundice and they have an associated cholangitis, or these patients have a bilirubin level of more than 15, then these patients can be subjected to the preoperative drainage either by the plastic stent or by the metal stent. Now, the question comes, would you like to place SAMS or the plastic stent? This is a very common question, and this is debatable even in the Gastroenterology Society. We talk about patient is financially poor, we should put a plastic stent. My suggestion to my colleague or those who are present in this webinar, one-time cost of SAMS is more than the plastic stent, but if the plastic stent get blocked, these patients develop cholangitis, they require high-end antibiotics, they require repeat ERCP, and the cost goes more than if you are placing the metal stent. So I think if the patient require neoadjuvant chemotherapy, in those situations, it is preferable to place the metal stent. And if the ERCP was done just to reduce the bilirubin level, in those situations, plastic stent can be placed. So this is the study which was published in Gut 2015. It was a multi-center study, and they compared the fully covered metal stent versus plastic stent, and what they have shown that the stent complication was significantly higher in the plastic stent group. So indirectly, the message is those patients who are going to go for a Whipple surgery within 3 to 4 weeks time, and your intention of putting the stent is to decrease the bilirubin level from 15 to less than 10, in those scenario, plastic stent is good enough. But if patient requires a neoadjuvant chemotherapy, my feeling is, in my practice, I always try to put the metal stent. That is a better option because the need of the repeat ERCP because of the stent clogging is very less. The risk of cholangitis is very less because these patients are on immunosuppressive medicine and these patients behave very badly. So what is the current status of the preoperative biliary stenting for the distal malignant biliary obstruction? This is a review of 5 RCT, 18 cohort studies, 2 meta-analysis. And the conclusion was preoperative biliary stenting in the distal biliary obstruction need not to be done in all patients. As I discussed, it should only be done if patient require neoadjuvant chemotherapy, if patient have a bilirubin of more than 15, or patient in cholangitis. These 3 groups you can do the preoperative or the pre-procedural, you can do the biliary stenting. Drainage only in those where the bilirubin level is more than 15, or concomitant cholangitis, renal failure, or there is a delayed surgery because of any reason. And fully covered metal stent, though appear costlier, remain a viable option for drainage without cholangitis and the reintervention. Because if these patients develop cholangitis or the stent get blocked, the cost of treatment is much higher than putting the fully covered metal stent. Now, the problem with the preoperative stenting is there is an operative time is increased because surgical colleagues don't want to subject these patients immediately after the surgery, immediately after the ERCP. Infective complications are higher, bile cultures are positive till 6 weeks, and anastomosis during the Whipples is difficult. So my message to my colleagues is you don't require pre-operatively biliary stenting in all lower ends bile duct block. It should only be done if patient has cholangitis, if patient bilirubin is more than 15 milligram, because if the bilirubin level is high, the risk of post-operative infection is high, or patient is in cholangitis, or he requires neoadjuvant chemotherapy. In those situations, you do the biliary stenting. Otherwise, these patients should be subjected for the surgical intervention. Palliation of malignant biliary strictures. Both plastic and the metal stent can be used as I discussed. The NIP Sohendra has used the first time the plastic stent, and in 1986, a new era of stent by Hans Wollstand, he produced the metal stent, which has a larger diameter in comparison to plastic stent. Now, what are the common differences? I'm not very sure all of you are doing the ERCP or not, but many of you are physicians or the surgeons. The plastic stent has a small luminal diameter. They are 10 French, means 3.3 millimeter. Stent dysfunction is higher, seen in 30 to 50% of the patient after 3 to 4 months. They are low price. But self-expanding metal stents, they are larger diameter. They are 30 French, that is 10 millimeter. Stent dysfunction is seen less than 15% of cases, up to 6 to 10 months. But one-time cost of metal stent is more in comparison to the plastic stent. Now, when to use the plastic stent? If the patient has a tumor of more than 3 centimeter, who is not the candidate for the neoadjuvant chemotherapy, or patient has a liver metastasis and the life expectancy is less than 3 months. So another indication of plastic stent is, as a clinician, if you feel this patient is not going to survive more than 2 to 3 months, it is better to put the plastic stent, because you are not subjecting this patient for the neoadjuvant chemotherapy. This patient is not going for the surgical intervention. You are only using as a palliative measures, and you know that this patient has a life expectancy of less than 3 months, then yes, plastic stent can be used. But if patient has no liver metastasis and life expectancy is more than 4 to 6 months, it is always better to put the metal stent, because the plastic stent bound to occlude and these patients develop cholangitis. When we talk about the cost efficacy of SEMS for palliation of malignant biliary obstruction, total cost after 1 year has no significantly different by stent type, meaning that you use the partially covered or uncovered or the fully covered or the plastic stent, the total cost after 1 year is more or less same, because in the plastic group, chances of blockage of the stent is very high. And this is the patient who has a lower end CBD obstruction, and this is the ERCP scope, and we are putting the fully covered metal stent. Why is not running video? This was the video is not running, but you can see the metal stent was placed, and this is a fully covered metal stent, and which is easier and can be done in a very short span of the time. Biliary obstruction with the gastric outlet obstruction. So 50% of the patient who has a biliary stenting prior to the obstruction, 20% at the same time have a both gastric outlet and the biliary obstruction, and 30% patient following they develop the gastric outlet obstruction. The point in this important thing is, if patient has a gastric outlet obstruction and the biliary obstruction, which should be done first? The best possible thing is you should do the biliary first and then do the gastric outlet stenting, rather than putting the first doing the gastric outlet, because many of the time when you put a gastric outlet stent, these patients develop jaundice because the papilla get compressed. So it is important, if patient has both the blockade, first put the biliary stent followed by the gastric outlet stent. Biliary obstruction with the gastric outlet obstruction, biliary stenting is not required before duodenal stent placement with no associated biliary obstruction. I hope you understand. The meaning is that if patient is not jaundice and patient has a gastric outlet obstruction, you should not do the biliary stenting. You wait for it, because now either you can do the transduodenal stent, biliary stenting, or you can do EUS guided biliary drainage, or you can do the PTBD. So the message is, if patient is not having a biliary obstruction symptomatic, who is not required biliary drainage, then you only try to drain the gastric outlet obstruction. Endoscopic biliary drainage is successful in most patients with a duodenal stent. So you should not worry that once I will put the metal stent, how I'm going to do the biliary stenting. That should not be the concern. Now, when we talk about the Klaskin tumor means you are dealing with the hilum. And this is very important. I always talk to my students and I always says, you better learn to say that I'm not going to do ERCP in this patient, or this patient is not the right candidate for endoscopic intervention. Patient with the type 3 block or patient with the type 4 block, ERCP should be avoided. Either these patients should go for the PTBD, or patient as a type 4 block, then even the PTBD is not recommended. You can tell the patient, even your biliary drainage, either by the percutaneous route or by the ERCP route or by EUS, is not going to function. If you do the ERCP in type 4 porta block, you unnecessarily introduce the cholangitis, you further decrease the quality of life and the duration of life of these patients. So it is mandatory, whenever you are dealing with a Klaskin tumor that is a hilar block, you do an MRCP, you do a very good ultrasound and look for the type of block and then take the call. Issues with the Klaskin tumor is majority of the time, 95% of the time, you put the metal stent in these patients. I'm going to discuss the type of stent to be used, but majority of the time in the Klaskin tumor, you should put the metal stent. If patient cannot afford, my sincere request, refer the patient to the government institution where he can avail the metal stent, because plastic stent in these patients are create a lot of problem, and these patients develop cholangitis and they die. So preferably these patients should be placed with the metal stent. Yes, if these patients need to be subjected for the liver transplant, in those scenarios, yes, you can put the, or patient is going for the surgical resection. In those scenarios, you can put the plastic stent, because many of the time, hepatic surgeons want to reduce the bilirubin level, especially in the cholangiocarcinoma. In those situations, you should put the plastic stent or do the PTBD to reduce the bilirubin level less than 3. Otherwise, the role of plastic stent is not justifiable in the Klaskin tumor. Another question is number of the bile duct to be drained. And once you do the MRCP, you know that which bile duct needs to be drained. Amount of the liver parenchyma to be drained, which I'm going to talk, and technique to deploy, which I'm going to talk. So MRCP targeted stenting is mandatory. If you look at this MRCP image or this MRCP image, I can very well see that on the right side, I've got it. One system, you can see on the cholangiogram, left system is separated. Here, the left system is atrophic. Then you can do the MRCP guided cannulation of the bile duct. You can take the air cholangiogram and you can put the metal stent selectively in the dilated duct rather than try to drain or put the contrast in rest of the bile duct. So type of the stent I have already discussed. SAMS has a longer patency and better palliation. I think the plastic stent should be avoided in the hilar obstruction, and this is a meta-analysis which shows SAMS is better in comparison to the plastic stent. SAMS has a longer patency. Only uncovered SAMS are important. Please don't try to put the covered metal stent in the hilar block, because if you are going to place the covered metal stent, you are going to block the side branches and patient will end up into the cholangitis. And plastic stenting, if no definite decision about the curative or palliative, then you can try to put the plastic stent, otherwise the metal stent is the choice. This is the ESGE clinical guidelines. Now the number of bile duct of the lobe to be drained, this is very important. Earlier people was opacifying from the proximal to the stricture, and many of the time they opacify both the lobe. And this is the study which was published. This is a landmark paper published in 1998. If both the lobes are opacified in cholangiogram and you have drained both the lobes, then the life expectancy is roughly around 6 to 8 months. But the one lobe opacify and one lobe drained, then it is roughly around 145 days. But if both the lobe is opacify, the right and the left lobe, and you have only drained one, the life expectancy goes 45 days. So it is mandatory. You should do your ERCP with the guidance of your MRCP. You take the cholangiogram, you go into the intrahepatic ducts. Even you want to take the dye-cholangiogram, you selectively go where you want to go, directed through the MRCP and then put the dye. Please don't put the dye below the stricture to opacify both the ductal system. If you have opacify both the ductal system, you try draining both the ductal system, or if you are not able to do it, ask your interventional radiologist to do the PTBD and drain the system, otherwise patient will end up into the cholangitis. So both the lobe opacified, you have to put the stent, plastic or the metal depending upon the need, but as I told you, majority of the time, patient required to be placed the metal stent. Single lobe opacified, and you drain the single lobe opacify, the risk of cholangitis is less and the life expectancy is around 145 days. But if both the lobes are opacified, then the life expectancy is only 45 days. If you see, these photograph has been taken from the Cheng articles, and this was in 1998. At that time, metal stent was not very popular. That's why you are seeing the plastic stent. But I think in the last 1 decade, the scenario has changed. People barely use the plastic stent, and my advice, even if the patient is not affording, either don't do the procedure or refer the patient to the government institution or do the metal stenting. Now, this is another very important slide. If you look at the CT scan or the MRCP, the left lobe is atrophic. You look at here, the left lobe is atrophic. In MRCP, you see the crowding of the intrahepatic ducts. So intubating the atrophic segment, you increase the risk of cholangitis. Try avoiding draining the atrophic lobe. That is very important. Now, another important thing is amount of the liver parenchyma. Many of the time we do the unilateral stenting, and we initially people feel that if you drain around 33% of the liver, the jaundice is going to decrease. But now the liver volume drained to be more than 50%. That means you drain at least 2 bigger segments, which is mandatory to reduce the bilirubin level to desirable level, because the median survival is better when you drain more than 50% of the liver parenchyma. That is important. So now the technique, if you look at Asian as doing stent in stent technique, and the Western people do side by side. Side by side means you are putting the 2 metal stent on the side, but in stent in stent technique, from the one stent you take and you go into the other ductal system. So this is the side by side. This is the guide wire into the left, the guide wire into the right. Both the stent which has been placed into the intrahepatic duct, both the stent should be released. Now, few important points, those who are doing the ERCP. If you are not able to place side by side both the stent, because you require 6 French assembly of these stent. If you don't have that, because the Boston has come up with the 6 French, Cook already has 6 French assembly. If you are using the 10 French assembly, then you are not able to negotiate the 10 French assembly through your endoscope. Then the message is you have to drain first segment and then you go to the other segment. What should you do? The first stent should be outside the papilla. That is mandatory. Otherwise, it is very difficult for you to place the second stent. So either you place side by side, then both the stents should be at the equal level. That is the point to be remembered. If you are draining one segment and then draining the other segment, then the first stent should be outside the papilla. These are the few important points which you should remember. Stent in stent is more popular in the Asia, but the reintervention is difficult. So I think stent by stent is better in comparison to the stent in stent That is another study which was published in 2014. And what they have shown that the retreatment success was stent by stent. Stent side to side stent is better because you can do the re-intervention if these stent get blocked. But if you have done the stent in stent, then the re-intervention into the block segment is difficult. Now the question comes, which patients you can do the endoscopic and which patient you can do the percutaneous. So distal type block, type 1 hilar block or type 2 hilar block, I think endoscopy is better than radiology because it is faster, less invasive, less complication. But if patient has a type 3B or patient has a type 4 block, it is always better. You should do the percutaneous, and that shows the successful palliation is better in the percutaneous group. Procedure-related complications are better. So if patient has a type 3 block or type 4 block, it is better to do the percutaneous or refuse to do the drainage if patient has a more than type 4 block. So this is the recent concept which has come versus complete versus incomplete. Complete means you drain all the segments of the liver. That is right anterior, right posterior, the left. You have an option either all the 3 segments are separated or there is a 2 segments are separated, meaning that right anterior and right posterior are joining and the left is separate. So the message is you drain completely. If you look at here, the putting the stent into the 2 segment is also incomplete. So that is called as incomplete drainage. Incomplete drainage still has the risk of cholangitis. A complete drainage is always better. And in my practice, generally I prefer to do the complete drainage. What happened is in day-to-day practice, people feel that I do the 2-system drainage and leave the rest one system. Patient develop cholangitis after 3 to 4 days. He requires percutaneous. Cost of treatment goes high. Patient morbidity and mortality is high. So I think the management of the biliary obstruction, it is a teamwork where you have to discuss with the surgeons, you have to discuss with an endoscopist, radiologist, and oncologist. On that basis, you decide, does this patient require drainage or not? Number 1. If he requires drainage, should I put the plastic stent or the metal stent? If patient is a hilar obstruction, should I drain 1 lobe, 2 lobe, or all the 3 segments? So I think it is a multidisciplinary. You have to take the call on case-to-case basis rather than taking the ERCP scope, going in and putting the stent. I think that doesn't justify with the patient, and patient ultimately land up into the cholangitis. Their life expectancy goes down. They spend a lot of money in the hospital. So ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I think understanding the anatomy, for that the MRCP is mandatory before any biliary obstruction, either a lower end or the higher end, especially for the hilar block. You should not do ERCP without MRCP. Pre-operative drainage in selected group of the patient. All patient doesn't require a drainage of the obstructive jaundice. I still feel the SEMS are better. Palliative drainage with the SEMS is always better than the plastic stent. Do not drain the atrophic liver segment. Drain at least more than 50 centimeter. I still feel the complete drainage is better, even more than 50% of the liver parenchyma, and multidisciplinary approach in the hilar block is mandatory. Drain all opacified bile duct. If you are not able to do it, refer the patient to the tertiary care center. Ask your interventional radiologist. I always feel endoscopists who are doing the hilar intervention should always have the back support of the intervention radiology. Prefer a complete liver drainage instead of a unilateral and the bilateral. Plastic stent for the pre-operative drainage, or if the surgical resectability not evaluated, then yes, you can do the plastic stent. Uncovered stent for the palliation is better. In the malignant hilar obstruction, don't use the covered metal stent. And thank you for the patient's hearing.
Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful lecture. So we'll take questions. I think Dr. Pankaj will start with you. So are you there, Dr. Pankaj?
Yeah, I'm there.
Sir, one of the questions is someone asked how to decide number of stents to be placed, 3, 4, and so on. So in benign biliary strictures, at first setting, how many stents to be decided? As you told that most stents can be placed in first setting itself or sequentially at subsequent settings. Each setting we put one more stent every 3 to 6 months.
So what I think we usually do is, it depends on the etiology. for which you are doing stenting. So we usually have a tendency that if it is post-operative strictures, we would go to at least 4 to 5 stents, 10 French stent. That is what we do. And then timing, as I already told you, is depending. You can just keep on adding stents, or if required, exchange at 3 monthly intervals. So there is no fixed rule of thumb, but aggressive stenting, as I have as has been mentioned by Costamania, so at least 3 to 5 stents. That is what my practice is, not less than that. Dr. Rajesh,
Before
anything
Paul-
to add?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Pankaj, I think you have said very rightly. I would like to add few points, those who are doing the ERCP. When you are doing the multiple plastic stent, my request to the beginner is try to use the pigtail stent in the first and the second. Because if you put the straight stent by putting the second, third, or the fourth, there's a high chances your stent can go in and you are not able to successfully place, because by doing the ERCP, your first stent is going in. As a beginner, it is difficult for you to control that how to, because there are ERCP setting, you can do it. So my request to them is first or second stent, if you have placed the pigtail stent, then chances of migration are very less. But I absolutely agree with Pankaj. You try to put as many as stent. And another important thing, which is my take home, maybe in the less number of the patient. Many of the center they practice, they put one plastic stent or two, and in the next sitting, they don't remove it, they add on it. But what happened is, I have seen couple of cases, not all. These patients develop the sludge formation. So it is better if you are planning for the reintervention of ERCP, adding the cost of 1,500 rupees or 1,000 rupees for the plastic stent, remove the first one, clean the bile duct, and then try to put the second, third, and fourth. And when you are planning to remove 4 stent and you are planning to put the 6th stent, then remove all 4 stent, clean the bile duct, because many of the time lot of sludge is inside. Not in all cases, but some cases.
Sir, any technique of dilatation also prior putting the multiple stents to both of you, sir? Like many times, how much you dilate before putting this multiple stents?
What we follow is you either majority of the cases we use Sohendra dilators, and our practice is we try to put a 10 French stent at each session. That is, I think, very important. 7 French may go in easily, but you may not get the desired result. So what we do is first dilate. If the wire goes in, if your cannula goes in by the side, do 7 French dilator, Sohendra, and then a 10 French. If a 10 French dilator doesn't go, you can use a balloon, dilate it up to 4 to 6 millimeter, and then alongside you can put another 10 French stent. But 10 French stent, if it is possible, you should always prefer a 10 French rather than using a 7 French.
So very rightly said by Pankaj. One more point I want to add, because many of the time they don't have a hurricane balloon, they use the CRE balloon. Please don't try to use the CRE balloon inside the CBD. If you are using the balloon, the diameter of the balloon should be at least equal to the bile duct diameter. It should not be the bigger. If your intrahepatic biliary radicals are 6 millimeter, don't try to use the 8 millimeter balloon. Don't try to use the 1 centimeter. In the first go, try to use 4 or 6 millimeter, as rightly said by the Pankaj. That is important. Otherwise, risk of perforation is also there.
Sir, once perforation happened, how you diagnose it? Immediately you will be knowing that you are having a post-operative, he'll be a post-endoscopy, he'll be having peritonitis. How you know that patient has developed peritonitis? Any clues, like if you are doing aggressive stenting while during the procedure?
First and most important, you have to diagnose it on the table during the procedure. And that only and only reviewing your fluoroscopy is the clue. You will always see a streak of hair, which is not normal. You will see a white band of hair in the surrounding the bile duct. You will start seeing the kidney if there is some problem. That you have to be aware. That is the only thing. If you miss that, then it is a cascade of problems which is going to happen.
And the dye dissipate immediately.
Yes.
That is very important.
Dye
That is
will
very
dissipate,
important.
or even before the dye hair, you have to figure. Once you see a perforation in your life, you will remember it next time. We all have had perforations, and we have learned from that how to diagnose it, and it is always has to be on table. without any problem. It has to be prompt.
Okay. Sir, one more question to you, Dr. Desai. They have asked is that in benign biliary strictures, which type of metal stents, if you preferred, whether you prefer covered or uncovered or partially covered, which one you will prefer?
Always fully covered. Always fully covered.
Fully
No
covered, sir.
partially.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But fully covered in near, like sometimes we have stricture near the hilum. So, like, if we block it, there is drainage blockage. If one of the systems we are putting, there may be blockage of the one of the radicals. So, how to tackle that, sir?
But then you put multiple plastic stents and drain the contralateral side also. That is
Okay.
important. So you drain the if you want to put a metal on one, you drain the contralateral side. Don't put a fully covered stent only on one side. But usually you have strictures which are very high, benign, put multiple plastic stents, draining both the ducts.
Okay.
Forget
So,
about the uncovered stent. No uncovered stent in the benign biliary stricture. Forget. You should not think of it.
Never.
yes, sir. And important to drain all the segments. If you are draining one of the segments with fully covered, drain other segments with plastic.
You drain all the segments.
By Pankaj, put multiple plastic stents. And one more thing which I want to say, very rare scenario, Pankaj has given the answer. Many of the time, patient has a hepatico jejunostomy, and you are doing PTBT route or EUS route. There are small fully covered stent, but you should have an MRCP, and you should have a proximal stump of at least 1 centimeter where you can ledge your covered stent. It should not block the side branches. That is the only scenario you can use bilateral fully small stent if you have at least the stump of 1 centimeter on the both the side proximal to the stricture. Otherwise, don't venture to the with the covered stent, and never ever use the uncovered stent in the benign biliary stricture.
Dr. Pankaj, one more scenario which we see commonly is the post-lap poly bile duct injury and stricture. So they may refer to us at various points immediately after surgery or delayed after a few weeks, after 1 month. So what is your recommendation? We should tackle it as early as possible, and whether do you recommend MRCP in such scenarios prior to that?
Yeah. MRCP is always mandatory, is always better to have before planning any surgery. See, immediately post procedure, if you have a bile leak, you better to have a MRCP, because sometimes you will have ligated bile ducts that we see very often, or you may have some bile duct injury where there is a segment loss, then you don't unnecessarily venture. So an MRCP always very early or late. First is MRCP and then plan. Within first a few days, there is very high chance that it is a biliary injury with a bile leak. But if it is delayed, you don't have any collection. If there is only jaundice, then also MRCP will show you what stricture is there, the site of stricture, and then according to that you have to plan. So MRCP is always a must. That is what I feel.
MRCP is your GPS.
Yeah.
And second thing is, if patient is associated biloma, first make a controlled fistula.
Absolutely, always.
Don't
any ascites, any bilioma, first drain and only then you do an ERCP. Otherwise, the patient will go into sometimes fulminant sepsis, whatever precautions or whatever sterility you maintain.
Don't do the ERCP first and then drain.
Yes,
first,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I agree.
Okay, sir. And Dr. Rajesh, MRCP in malignant strictures, sometimes actually it's a GPS, I agree, but sometimes they say that it is like both systems are disconnected, but we find that while doing ERCP, we are able to negotiate. And so how you see ERCP and MRC, if you see MRC is foolproof or only it's a roadmap? What do you say in malignant?
You said MRCP is a roadmap for a foolproof before doing the biliary stenting in the hilar block.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There is no difference between the foolproof and the roadmap. Basically, you are adding in MRCP. You come to know there is a what are the type of block. Number one, if the segment is atrophic or not. These two information for the MRCP is mandatory, and you try to calculate the liver volume on the MRI film, which is along with the MRCP, and you plan to drain that system.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, Gaurav, if you have I will have to leave as I had told you previously.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
Thanks.
please. No,
So
no
I-
problem. Yeah, if there is any last question, probably I can answer. Otherwise, you and Dr. Rajesh can carry on then.
No, sir, I think you have explained everything very well in benign
Perfect,
biliary
okay.
fracture, sir. So it was pleasure to have you, sir, today
Right,
in
right.
ERCP 360 degree.
Okay.
So
Thank
we'll
you.
soon
Thank you
meet
for
in
the
person. Soon meet in person.
sure.
for conference.
As and when, definitely. Thank you so much for the invitation, Dr. Rajesh. Pleasure seeing you. I have another meeting I have to rush. So please, I am taking this opportunity. Thank you and bye bye.
Sir, Dr. Rajesh, some questions for you also. That's why actually I was asking to sir because I know that she was about to leave early. So, they have asked, sir, in periampullary tumor which needs palliation, which type of stent you prefer, covered, uncovered, or partially covered stents?
Uncovered SEMS.
So, as sir, as the dictum is there, in malignant obstruction, we have to put uncovered stems only. In benign problem is there, we have to put covered stems only. So that is the basic dictum. In benign, either put plastic.
In the malignant biliary obstruction also, if patient is an operable candidate and a patient has a lower and bile duct, then you can place a fully covered metal stent also. That's not
Okay,
a
sir.
But
Okay.
benign biliary structure, you should not place uncovered metal stent. That is very important.
Okay,
In a
sir.
higher block, you should not place the covered metal stent.
Sir, someone had asked the question like, if you have to dilate the hilar strictures, do we always need to dilate the hilar strictures, or do biliary RFA before putting two or more stents? As SEMS they are asking about, putting two or more SEMS, whether they need to dilate hilar strictures or do RFA and then put SEMS.
Yeah, is a very good question, and I will tell you the two important things. RFA Habib probe is available in the 10 French. If you are doing the RFA on the same time you are planning to put the stent, it's not that you do the RFA and then after some days you are going. Your wires are inside. You do the RFA with the Habib probe and then you put the metal stent. Number one. If you are not doing the RFA, then the question comes, do you dilate the stricture or would you like to place both the stents simultaneously? For the beginners, I recommend they should dilate with the hurricane balloon to 4 to 6 millimeter because putting the second stent is sometimes difficult. That's number one. Number second, when you are planning to put the two stent, the first stent should be placed in the difficult segment, which is tortuous, or the left ductal system where you have to cross a longer thing. That is very important for you to understand. The difficult to place stent segment should be deployed first and easier in the straight to be deployed on the second number. These 2 points should be remembered. I dilate in my practice to reduce the procedure time. Why I'm saying, if I'm not using the 6 French assembly, if you are using the 2 6 French assembly, both the assembly will open simultaneously. There is no problem. If you don't have a 6 French assembly, because which is available with the Cook, and now the Boston has also come, most of the metal stent has an assembly of 8 to 10 millimeter. In that scenario, you cannot place the 210 French stents simultaneously because your scope channel diameter is not that much. In that case, you have to place first, and then along the first, you go second. So if you have not dilated, or if you have not made the first stent flanges outside, or if the difficult segment has not been placed first, it is very difficult to take the second assembly across the open up metal stent. Your second stent should be easier, straight, and should be placed once the first stent has deployed. You should immediately do it. So when you are doing side-by-side stenting with the 10 French assembly, meaning that first you leave in one segment, you remove the catheter, put the second assembly. In that scenario, it is always better to dilate. Otherwise, putting the second stent is difficult, and you failed with an ERCP, and you have to call with the radiologist. We ourselves, after doing so many years of ERCP, we also encountered problem. So the dictum is dilate. If you have a 6 French assembly, put both the stent assembly in, open at the equal level at the lower end. If one stent you place and you try to put the second, then first stent flange should be outside the papilla, and then you take alongside that, you take the second stent. These are the few finer points should always be remembered.
Very well said, sir. Sir, one more question is there. I think it was for Dr. Desai, but I think you can also, sir, it's like chronic pancreatitis. They have asked for benign biliary stricture due to chronic pancreatitis. They want to ask multiple plastic stent stents versus focal SEMS, fully covered SEMS. Which one do you prefer, and how do you define refractory strictures in chronic pancreatitis?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So first of all, the concept of plastic stent, putting the multiple plastic stent, you requires to do a multiple ERCP sessions. So you can put a fully covered stent, it requires one-time ERCP. The problem with the fully covered metal stent, sometimes they migrate. This is the only disadvantage. Otherwise, the two important thing, if you are reducing the number of ERCP, it is better to do the fully covered metal stent. If repeating the ERCP is not a problem, then you can do the multiple 3 sessions of the ERCP and you can put the multiple plastic stent. That is the scenario. Now, when you talk about how to assess the
Sir, how to define refractory strictures in chronic pancreatitis?
Yeah, refractory stricture, you are very clear. Once you remove the metal stent within few days or week time, if patient again develop the jaundice number, that's for any benign biliary stricture, or even while removing the stent and when you take the inflated balloon out and you see the balloon is not coming and there's a resistance, or when you put the dye and dye has not drained, or patient develop cholangitis within 48 hours of the time, that indicate your stent therapy has not worked. But yes, in chronic pancreatitis, there's a high propensity that patient will develop the restricture. You have to go for the restenting method in these patients.
Okay, sir. And as you have rightly pointed out that when we compare the cost, you have shown study also at 1 year, multiple plastic. So if the patient is required repeated stenting, so we should discuss both the options and then make a valid point, long-term valid solution. So it was a very valid point, sir. And someone has, Dr. Zubin has also asked, in periampullary tumors, I think uncovered SEMS we have recommended, and as you have also, they have asked, some experts recommend fully covered SEMS in such scenario because there is problem of tumor ingrowth in periampullary tumor. So what is your experience about, sir?
I do agree. The two important point, Zubin has asked this question.
Yes, sir, Dr. Zubin Sharma.
Dr. Zubin, two important thing. Stent ingrowth can occur in the mid CBD block, higher CBD block, or the lower CBD block. The ingrowth and the overgrowth both are possible. Yes, there's a concept when you're dealing with the lower end CBD block, you can place the palliative as a measure. You can put the partially covered stent also because it is a malignancy and you are doing as a palliative method, then yes, you can do the partially covered stent, which take care of the both. But the study shows that with the uncovered stent, the risk of blockage is more in comparison to the fully covered stent. But the problem with the periampullary growth, the growth become necrotic and they produce, if you see the history of the periampullary malignancy, the duodenal malignancy, they necrose and the patient has an intermittent cholangitis. There is a fluctuation in the bilirubin level. Similarly, when the growth get necrosed, these patients may have a high chances of the slippage of the metal stent also. So I think it is an individual call, but yes, the fully covered stent can be placed in the lower end block, especially the periampullary also. I do agree, but the risk of migration will be high. One important thing, those who are hardcore ERCP people, many of the time IPMN of the pancreas, they may produce the obstruction. Even you put a covered stent or the metal uncovered stent, because of the thick mucin, these stents get blocked. In these patients, the radiotherapy is the best method to prevent the blockage of the stent.
One more thing is, sir, I will one more point which we have not discussed is how to determine the length of metal stent in malignant blockage. So in periampullary, what do you prefer, 4 centimeter or 6 centimeter stent? Or in Hyler also, sir, what is the length of stent? 6, 8, 10 are available. How do you decide the length of stent, sir, in malignant obstruction?
Pertaining question. Number one, 4 centimeter stents are not available in our country. Generally, in the lower end CBD block, you try to place the 6 centimeter. The reason is that if you put a bigger and these stents get blocked, then the going to the other system is difficult. It is always better to place below the hilum when you are dealing with the lower end bile duct obstruction. Knowing about the length of the metal stent, it will depend what is the level of the hilum. On fluoroscopy, you can measure it and you can choose the length of the metal stent. But yes, using the 10 centimeter metal stent is not preferable because they have a diameter of 10 millimeter when they expand. And if you leave deep into the intrahepatic ducts where the duct diameter is not 10 millimeter, it is going to injure the liver parenchyma and your subsequent procedures will be difficult. So you can measure on the fluoroscopy, number one. There are instruments available on the scales you can measure. Otherwise, majority of the Hyler block can be treated with the 8 centimeter metal stent. You don't require 10 centimeter. And the lower end block, most of the time, not most of the time, always can be tackled with a 6 centimeter. If you have 4 centimeter, it is better to use the 4 centimeter also.
Okay. I think, sir, we have discussed most of the points. Any important points for beginner which you want to highlight when we deal with malignant obstruction, sir?
Yeah.
Before winding.
Few points which I want to tell you. All surgical obstructive jaundice doesn't require ERCP. This is very important.
Yes, sir, as you have discussed.
It is operable. If patient is not having cholangitis, if patient is not having a bilirubin of more than 15, please don't try to do ERCP. If patient has a biliary obstruction, don't do the ERCP for the diagnosis. There are good numbers of tests available to diagnose the disease because you put the stent, then it is difficult to do the rest of the intervention. Number third, when you are venture into the Hyler block, you should have a backup support of interventional radiologist. You should always do MRCP. If because of any reason you have ossified the lobes and you are not able to drain, immediately refer the patient to the other centers where the PTBT facilities are available, because these patients are going to die within 48 to 72 hours because of the infections. You cannot say, I will going to give the high-end antibiotics also. So I think these few points are important while taking care of the biliary obstruction.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for such lucid lecture as well as excellent discussion. It's always pleasure to have you and hoping to meet you in person soon.
Thank you, Dr. Gaurav. Thank you for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
So we'll wind up now. Thank you. Thank you.